The federal government will table its Green Paper on the future of Australian tertiary education in Parliament during the first fortnight in December. That paper is expected to attract suggestions from people involved in education, and information obtained from public debate should help develop a white paper spelling out government policy around April next year. Member for Newcastle Alan Morris expects the Green Paper will focus on more than just regional universities and colleges of advanced education, and believes major changes may be made to tertiary education facilities across the country. He doubts the Green Paper will contain specific names of institutions, but believes there will be implications for Newcastle's CAE and university.
If what comes forward is the same as what's been put forward in the past, then there's going to be one hell of a fight.
What are your main fears about the outcome of this Green Paper?
Well, my main fears about the future of our institutions are that if we are downgraded into a unicol, our capacity to retain our research and the very high standard of academics, and particularly in some of our disciplines, will diminish, and will be seen more as a training institution rather than a university in particular that has a very high level of research capacity.
What do you see as being the advantages if they were to combine?
Well, if they were to combine in the right way, for example, as a centre of excellence, for example, with Australian specialities, then that in itself would generate the kind of status and the kind of funding that they'd need. That would be the opposite to what's been proposed in the past.
Last month, Varley's, Gninnin's and Alco Steel announced they had teamed with the Bond Corporation, Hyundai, ANZAC Technologies and TNT to bid for the contract to build 12 frigates for the Australian and New Zealand navies. Their plan is to use the Dyke Peninsula on Newcastle Harbour to develop a shipbuilding facility which would cost upward of $100 million. The second group to register its interest wants to use the Carrington Slipways facility at Tomago as well as the harbour site for the extensive construction fit-out and trial of the ships. The new group, called Australian Warship Systems, in this document presented to the Department of Defence today, is making capital of the fact that all three participants in the group have extensive record as efficient suppliers to the Australian Navy.
Each have a dedicated scope of work in that ANI will do the integrated logistics support, all the design responses to and spare parts, training and that sort of thing. Carrying Slipways will build the ships and AWA will do the weapons and electronics.
By the end of December, the government plans to announce a short list of 2 prime contractors. The Williamtown Dockyard in Victoria is a front-runner, with one of the Newcastle consortiums tipped to take the other spot. They will pair with 2 design houses from overseas, with tenders expected to close at the end of next year. The Victor Air Tourer was built by the same man who made the lawnmower a household word. After building 168 of the planes, the Air Tourer design was sold to a New Zealand company. However, enthusiasts rescued the local design and brought it back to Australia, and now use the plans to produce custom-made spare parts. The tiny 2-seater is very sturdy and tailor-made for pilot training and aerobatic work. A group of Sydney businessmen now want to put the Air Tourer back into production and are looking to a Hunter Valley company to make and assemble the planes. Elrington Industries at Kersley is negotiating to build the planes, which will cost about $100,000 each. About 3 planes will be built in the first 6 months. Elrington, based on the former underground mine site, has all the skills needed to see the Victor Air Tourer flying again.
They envisage that we'll press most of the components here, assemble here, and then the motor, even though it's imported from overseas, will be put into the aircraft. So the whole aircraft will start from a strip of stainless steel and end up flying out of here.
The Society announced that new loans will drop 0.5% to 13.75%, while existing loans will drop to 14%. For new borrowers, the new rate will take effect today, while existing borrowers will have to wait until February 1. The reduction will mean a saving of approximately $15 per month on the average home loan of $45,000 over 25 years. According to Newcastle Permanent's Managing Director, Frank Wotherspoon, it's hoped that the reduction has a significant effect on the local economy.
The reduction is intended to do two things. It's intended to stimulate the local real estate market. It is intended to benefit the local home building industry.
Although Craig had to pull out of the Hawaii Ironman with a back injury, he did however pick up some recently developed state-of-the-art equipment. The handlebars on Craig's bike are called Scott bars and lead to the rider sitting in a more aerodynamic position. It's claimed the Scott bars help cut 2 minutes off an athlete's time over 40 kilometres, which can be the difference between winning and losing.
They've been bringing them out in the States now for about a year, the handlebars, and the first time I saw them was when I was in Hawaii. And you speak to the guys who have been using them and they just wouldn't ride without them now. They're supposedly, giving you 10 minutes in an ultra distance and up to 2 minutes in a short course. And 2 minutes these days can be the difference between lots of money and no money, thousands of dollars to hundreds of dollars.
Craig has also brought back a pair of Roval wheels which sell for $600 a pair. They have only half the usual number of spokes, which are flat, an aerodynamic hub and are made of a carbon alloy. Craig sees the new equipment has a great benefit in getting to the top.
I've just started to break into the top 10 in the state in every race, and I feel I'll be within the top 3 or 4 before the New South Wales titles, which is in February at Dubbo.
Newcastle contemporary artists have enjoyed 3 successful years as a cooperative, and it's a record they say is deeply envied by many other groups in the state who've had nothing like the same success. Tonight's opening of an exhibition by almost all 200 member artists is a chance to celebrate that success and naturally make a few sales. And the response has certainly been healthy to artworks encompassing almost every possible medium. However, they are similar in one way. A size limit on works has been set to make them all fit into the gallery space provided. But Newcastle Contemporary Artists chairperson Jim Carrier says the artists have coped well, proving that small can also be beautiful.
Most people are used to working on a smallish scale, which is 2 foot by 3 foot, say, and to ask them to come down to a frame size, which is less than 30 centimetres, so sometimes you're getting down to 6 inches by 4 inches, which is a smallish postage size, which does demand a lot if you're not used to it, yeah.
And how do you think they've coped with it?
Pretty well.
The exhibition will remain open on Fridays and weekends until the 20th of December, when the group takes a break until February next year. The yacht appeared to be in trouble after rounding Moon Island off Blacksmiths Beach. The crew apparently attempted to make the inlet but then reefed sails and began to take a battering from a 2-metre swell. Members of the Swansea Belmont Surf Club saw the yacht was in distress and sent out 2 rescue boats with a backup anchor.
We just went out there to make sure he didn't try and drift any further, try and hold him in position until the police got out there.
Newcastle Water Police joined the rescue bid, attaching a line and towing the stricken vessel to Newcastle. It's believed a crew of 3 men were on board, but late last night radio contact still hadn't been established with the yacht.
There will be no looking backwards. After all, the past has got us where we are now. The first stage of the study, looking at the current industrial position and studying overseas models which pertain to us, is being managed by Sydney consultant Philip Manides, who stressed that while there have been other studies, this one is different.
Well, I think what's new in our approach is that we're really focusing on the innovation process. we really feel that that hasn't been identified as the key issue in previous studies. And that innovation process involves identifying key entrepreneurs, innovators in the region, speaking to them, finding out how they tick, finding out what problems they have in this region, and finding out why we haven't got many local entrepreneurs, and then trying to develop those local entrepreneurs in this region.
Well, traditionally we've had steel and coal and bulk handling with the port, but what sorts of industries are you now looking at?
Well, those traditional industries, the region was dependent on those traditional industries. We need to break our dependence on those and look at new industries, which are possibly knowledge-based industries, out of research and development at the university, for example, more commercialisation of that research, and other softer industries like tourism and other industries as well.
This year's contest carried a total of over $8,000 in prizes and prize money, and being the last on the Australian circuit attracted the best. Included in this year's tournament were 3-times world champion Mike Novikov of Sydney, 4-times Australian champ David Parkes of Byron Bay, current Australian champion Simon Farrer of Sydney, and current New South Wales title holder Dale Ponsford. In this afternoon's Open final, it was Simon Farrer who finished first ahead of Novikov. Farrer now goes on to compete in the World Kneeboard Championships set down for Puerto Rico. Current Australian junior champion Craig Ashdown of Coffs Harbour took out the junior title, while David Parkes took the senior division.
A meeting was held at the hospital this morning to try and improve the situation, but there appears little that can be done in the short term except to give periodic relief to overworked resident medical officers. Hospital Chairman Ken Guy said the facility may even have to invite doctors from overseas to fill vacant senior medical officer positions. But even this would only be a short-term solution, as they could be appointed for only 12 months.
We've advertised right throughout the Commonwealth. We've been to the teaching hospitals for looking for people to come to Maitland, but to date we've had little success at getting anybody here. At the moment we're investigating bringing doctors in from overseas, but this will possibly take 6 months before it'll be able to be completed.
Even then they'd only be staying for a short while.
Yes, they only stay for 12 months.
The person responsible for appointing resident medical staff in the area is the Deputy Director of Medical Services, Dr. Diana Lang. Dr. Lang explained that Maitland needs senior medical officers because visiting staff and specialists service such a large area, they're not always on call.
Well, Maitland Hospital comes into that category of hospitals, of which there are quite a number in New South Wales, where the kind of resident staffing you need there are more senior resident staffing, people who are 3rd or 4th year postgraduate. And that's because there are no registrars there and no staff specialists there, and the visiting medical staff cover a number of other hospitals. Therefore, they're not able to be immediately available, and therefore we can't send interns or junior resident staff there. And the difficulty that we've experienced is we haven't been able to recruit and retain in the system people in their 3rd and 4th years. And a lot of hospitals in New South Wales are experiencing this problem.
The most likely suspect in yesterday's snake attack would have been a black snake similar to this one. According to expert Ian Beat-Hill, they're one of the most common snakes in the district and among the most venomous. He says positive identification of this snake or several others during the trauma of an attack would be very difficult.
It is difficult. The best way of identification is via the scales of the snake. And of course, if you've just been bitten, you probably don't want to feel like staying around to start counting scales on a snake. Things like the scales on the head, the small scales down at the very tip of the tail here called subcaudals, the amount of ventral scales, which are the stomach scales, and the scales across the body. However, most people bitten haven't got time for that.
Few nights in Newcastle, if any, can rival the glamour of the city's premier modelling event as it reached its spectacular conclusion. The night was a moment of truth for almost 40 young fashion hopefuls from juniors through to teenage and adult categories. It was, of course, also a night of high fashion with a range of garments that organisers say now turn the heads of Sydney society as well. After 6 heats throughout the year and judging of hundreds of models, the final incredibly difficult decision. By the time the finalists were modelling these stunning furs, the verdict had been reached, but for the audience at entrance, just a few more moments of suspense, then the announcement.
Number 39, Kim Paris.
For the winner, 23-year-old Kim Paris, a holiday in Paris or London and a year's modelling contract with Chadwick's agency, perhaps a first step into a new world.
I don't know, so many doors could open up for me in my hairdressing, my modelling, and I dance as well, so who knows, and I'm sure something good will come out of this. It's just like a dream come true.
The task force says its statistics show a quarter of all people now working full-time in the Hunter would like to opt for a part-time arrangement. However, the team believes there is still a lot of confusion in the community about the concept of regular part-time work. Ross Edmonds, a project officer with Newcastle Out of Workers, says it is not casual work where awards and conditions are eroded away. Regular part-time work should carry pro-rata benefits in terms of sick leave and holidays. It's simply permanent work on a part-time basis. He says existing schemes at some retail stores, hospitals and government offices already work well for both employers and employees.
Quite a few employers in both government and private industry are offering this now. I mean, 5 years ago there was very little, but it is coming, and we think that usually it's a good thing for everyone involved.
Isn't it inevitable, though, that if regular part-time work was introduced, it's women who would be pushed into taking it?
A lot of the demand for regular part-time work does come from women because of childminding arrangements, but an increasing number of males as well as females are opting for this for a whole range of reasons other than simply minding young children, because they've got commitments with study, upgrading their skills, other things they want to do with their lives.
"140 photographs, both black and white and colour, are featured in Hunter Valley People, each depicting the private and everyday lives of their subjects. It's taken photographer Alan Chawner almost 9 months to complete the exhibition, which has cost $20,000 to produce. He's hoping to obtain sponsors to help with expenses and send it on an international tour, taking in Paris and Grenoble in France and Newcastle upon Tyne in England. Eventually, it may become a permanent exhibition at the Regional Museum. He says the works are like an extended photo album, showing individual sporting interests, hobbies, religion, social life and work environment.
The people in these photographs have a lot to say with how they're seen, and I always show them their photographs back, and we select them, and then sometimes we discuss them, but then I print them, show them, and here they are on the wall. So.
How do you expect the people in France and Britain to react to these pictures?
Well, I talk a lot about banality, the banality of our lives here and how we might see them as banal. But for French and English people, perhaps they're not so banal. Perhaps the ordinary things that we do are very interesting for those people.
It's the second time the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie City choirs have got together for a performance. This year's production of Elijah follows their success last year with Handel's Messiah. Last night, the 80 chorus and 35-member orchestra rehearsed Elijah for the last time. The choirs have been rehearsing individually since July and have been working together for the past month. The orchestra, comprising professional, amateur and student musicians, have been rehearsing since the end of November. According to conductor Alan Thrift, all the hard work is paying off.
It's quite a challenging work, a very challenging work for the orchestra and for the vocalists. And they're working very hard, and I hope that on Sunday afternoon they'll make a valiant attempt at doing the oratorio in the way it is meant to be performed.
The only performance of Mendelssohn's Elijah will be given at the Newcastle City Hall this Sunday at 2:30. Soloists include Newcastle soprano Jennifer Barnes and former Novocastrian contralto Marilyn Harris.
Born in 1926, Dave Sands was one of Australia's greatest boxers, dominating the sport during the 1940s. He won the Australian middleweight, light middleweight and heavyweight titles, the Australasian middleweight title and the British Empire middleweight title. There was plenty of boxing memorabilia on display, including Sands' shorts and one glove he was wearing when he knocked out Dick Turpin in the first round to win the British Empire middleweight title in 1949. Many boxing greats were present today, including Troy and Guy Waters, as well as Billy Mayles, who last night refereed Jeff Fenwick's easy first-round win in Sydney. Sands was ranked number 1 in the world, but never won the world middleweight title because, as boxing historian Michael Clark says, the Americans were scared of him.
We own the title and we say who will hold it.
So they didn't want to see Dave Sands fighting one of theirs?
They certainly did not. Look, early in Dave's trips overseas, in one of his trips, he sparred with the Australian Jackie Ma, who he'd fought a couple of times. Ray Robertson, the world title holder at that time, came into the gymnasium as Dave was sparring with Jackie Ma, and Dave flattened Jackie Ma with a left hook, and that was all that Robertson said that he ever wanted to see of him. He said, he's too cute for me, and he was. He would have beaten Robertson undoubtedly.
On the 11th of August 1952, Dave Sands, at the age of 26, died in a truck accident. The appeal for funds to erect a monument has been launched by friends, fans and contemporaries of Sands, who believe he rivalled Les Darcy as Australia's greatest middleweight boxer.
Going hard on the outside, tucked down low.
The competition was intense in the sidecar division. Last night was the last chance riders had of forcing their way into the state championships.
Into the wall goes Griffiths, up and over.
Luckily, no one was injured, with Gary Treloar going on to win the final from Grant Bond and Phil McCurtain. In the Super Sedan division, Bob Brewer, driving a Pontiac, won the pit crew final from newcomer Greg Hodges in a Commodore, despite plenty of pressure from New South Wales champ John Pine, who finished third.
Work and no play is making life very lonely for Japanese dairy farmers. They're visiting Australia on a Goodwill tour, and they admit there is a romantic angle. Organisers hope the hard-working young men and women will find plenty in common during the trip, but they dismiss Australian media claims that the tour is a sex romp.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.